Arknights Endfield just recently released, and most players still think team building is just match fire with fire or electric with electric, aka match the elements, and that works until it doesn't. And this is just because some characters don't reward mono element playstyles at all. I mean, we have Mono Electric, which is easily one of the best teams in the game for free-to-plays, and it rewards everything being electric. And then on the opposite end of that, you might have something like Mono Physical, which doesn't really play nice at all. In fact, Mono Physical might be one of the worst mono elements in the game because they all steal from each other. And I honestly believe that this is why people are confused on who actually works together in what team, how, and why. So today I want to reconceptualize how team building works in Arknights Endfield with 3 layers in mind. After this video, you'll know how to build infield teams properly, not just by element, but by role, trigger conditions, uptime, and more. Henshin go go, baby. What's good, guys? Yoku here, and I'm about to explain to you why people are already stuck in this game. Similar to most modern day gacha games, the tutorial is used to teach you exactly what it is the game wants you to do, or at least a basic understanding of what we have going on. Now, coming from Zenless Zone Zero, a lot of the player base is learning, if you will, the things that they can do as of right now, because the game kind of sucks at teaching you the more advanced things. But one of the things that I always talk about is that the game doesn't necessarily want to teach you the advanced things. It wants you to learn those advanced things. And I do feel like Endfield is kind of catered towards that manner. And I think the Endfield community, the audience for this game, especially coming from the OG Arknights, they're more prone to figuring these things out, the more advanced strategies or techniques, and that's what they like to do. They love leaving things up for exploration. So what this tutorial teaches you is a basic understanding of like status effects, you know, how electrification works, or maybe the basic skill for lift. It teaches you about elemental stacking, again, the electrification or lifting things, physical stacking, things like that. But it also is going to teach you a little bit about the basic reactions in the game, right? A final strike, being able to, hey, I staggered the enemy, I broke their shield, and now I'm going to be able to get this this big hit off of whatever's going on. Or after I do lift and I see that they have a stack on them for vulnerability, I go for my skill, and now I can crush them with the MC, and that's going to give me a lot of damage. Now, what the basic tutorial doesn't teach you is going to be things like trigger conditions. So in the case of somebody like I can never pronounce his name, Arknights, I think is how you pronounce it.
Пограничник.
In the case of Arknights, his kit in particular is a lot different than a lot of other characters in the game. His kit features a skill that applies breach, which breach, for those that don't know, is the other physical status or attack in the game that removes all of the other physical buildup that you've done. In this case being vulnerability. Vulnerability is the status that a physical unit puts on the character or the enemies, and breach or crush takes those away. So if you build up 2 stacks and you do something with crush, crush takes it away. It does not build on top of what you already have. And then his combo skill is whenever somebody is breached or crushed, then he can activate his combo skill. So he's a lot different than a character like Inman. Inman is a character that is going to be able to, hey man, did somebody else use their combo skill? Okay, great, I can use my combo skill now, right? Or their battle skill, I can use my combo skill. And Arknights does not work that way at all. So now you have to build a team around that. The tutorial also doesn't teach you about application speed, the fact that some of these statuses wear off faster or slower than others, and depending on whatever you have in your kit, you might need a character to build SP faster. You might need a character to have a slower rotation. For characters like Levitain, for instance, where she really just likes being on the field all the time, and you could play her one of many ways, to be fair, and one of those ways is kind of automatic, where you just do it yourself, and the other way is where you let the team do work for you, and it's actually even faster than doing it the automatic way. Rotation flow is something else that the game doesn't teach you, and this is essentially teaching you, like, as I said before, how does this team function? How does it roll around together? And then of course the last one being like, who benefits from these reactions versus who enables them? As I mentioned earlier with Arknights, who is giving him the vulnerability stacks? Because if his entire kit is about consuming vulnerability stacks, that means that nothing in his kit really applies those vulnerability stacks. So I'm going to need to build a team around that of who's going to be able to enable my character to do their actual kit. Because if I'm just building units that I think work together because they all have the same gray color scheme or red color scheme, I'm not really getting any advantage out of that, and I'll never activate my combo skill. If I needed to give an example of something like maybe, I don't want to say a bad team example, but something that's a little less optimal would be something like a mono fire team. This team being Wolfguard, Leviathan, or Leviathan, Akakuri, and Ember, who I don't have. So imagine that there's a magical Ember inside of the slot, right? Maybe I'll get some B-roll for the team if somebody else has it, I don't know. But point being is that would be a team. And so the way that this team essentially works would be using Ember and trying to build up her stacks and what she has going for her. Anything that's in her kit would be focused around her. But Ember is a character that is typically doing damage. She doesn't want to not do damage. Wolfguard is going to be an applier who's going to inflict or apply the heat infliction so that you can get away with whatever the team wants. And in Leviathan's case, Leviathan wants heat infliction applied to everybody or as many characters as possible so that she can absorb it all, use her enhanced skill, and then repeat the process. This is going to help her build up a lot more ultimate energy very fast. And then you're going to be able to just swing this gigantic sword across the entire field and pretty much cleave everybody down with nothing but flame energy. And then Akakuri being here is literally just a buffer, but she also gives you more SP energy. So on paper, this team would work very well. And this would probably be what you could consider Leviathan's best team. But when you actually get into playing the team and realizing that you're going to overcap, right? Leviathan doesn't need as many heat inflictions because she's going to apply it herself in certain conditions. Those conditions being when she's in her ultimate and a few other things. And so now that you realize that, you just have other units on the team essentially doing nothing. If I have 2 units on my team that are applying extra heat infliction when I don't need it, that's not going to help me at all. And I could, in fact, use a teammate that's going to be able to buff my Leviathan's damage, like a heat amp or heat susceptibility. I could also use something like, for instance, Ardelia. Ardelia can pretty much take away the enemy's resistances to any element in the game or any art in the game. And then if you have her signature weapon, which they're trying to give us for, actually we do get it for free just by going through day 10, right? We're gonna get her weapon for free. Her weapon is incredibly good for that character, being able to amp up the art's damage by I think 28 or 24%, something like that. And then it's also going to help with the susceptibility that she's going to be able to apply as well. So like, it's really good. Building a team like that would be more beneficial for anybody really, because now you get buffs, you get debuffs on the enemy, you still get your heat infliction, and you keep your main DPS plus sub DPS. And so instead of underperforming roles, now you have, I guess, more accurate or performing roles, if you will. I don't want to say they're overperforming, but now they actually do their job. You don't have excess application and your reaction downtime is a lot smoother. We'll talk about that in a bit, but cooldowns is what I'm talking about. Every character has different cooldowns. Some have 16, some have 10, some have 18, some have 25, some have 30, some have 40. The list goes on. So in order for us to understand like building teams, right? The first layer that I would say is the most important layer, or I don't know if it's the most important, but the first layer to the entire step is basically understanding what it is that you want to do. So if you are trying to build a mono element team, there are a couple of things you want to keep in mind, like high consistency. Okay, so is this team going to be able to consistently keep up the application, the electric application and consumption, or whatever reaction you're going for, so that I can keep applying the damage? Is my main DPS going to be able to take advantage of whatever this team is fully capable of? You can see something like that with my mono electric team, which I do believe is the best free-to-play team in the game right now, being Arknights, Aviwina, Perlica, and Antal, because this team is straight up buffing everything in the game. And if you learn how to optimize or play this team, you have an endless amount of skill points as well as an endless amount of combo skills. Maybe endless isn't the right word, but a good amount. By the time you rotate out of your entire rotation about 2 times, the mobs would be gone, and then boss rotations or boss fights are just kind of like rinse, wash, and repeat. Yeah. And so the way that team works, very simple to understand once you actually, read the kits and understand it. It's got a little bit of tech to it, a little bit of things that you can figure out. And the lineups are pretty sweet too. I really do enjoy this team. And I think everyone has access to this team because it's kind of like 2 of them are given to you for free. And then the other 2, you're bound to get them. The next part of layer 1 would be like, when do these characters work best, right? Who scales directly with elemental uptime, or maybe who scales directly or beneficially, I suppose, with like what's going on the team. A good example of that would be a character like Antal, right? If we're talking about the mono electric, Antal applies the electric susceptibility and heat susceptibility through his action of focus, or rather through his effect called focus, and focus lasts for 60 seconds. This may go up or down depending on the rank that you have. I'm not entirely too sure, but it's all in there. You can see it whenever you click on the character. This also increases as you go up the amount of susceptibility that you're applying to this enemy. Now, I don't have the accurate or the exact numbers. I believe it's 6% at like rank 3. This might go up to 15, 18, 20. I don't know yet because I'm not at the end of the game, but this is all it's doing. And you apply this to the main guy that you're attacking so that you can eliminate him as fast as possible. And so not only is this applying the direct direct uptime, or rather the elemental uptime, right? Scaling directly with what your team has going on. You also have same element allies to completely take advantage of Ontal's buffs. And this allows you to do something a little bit wonky, but it definitely works in this game, where you could probably play electric and fire at the same time, and then he's going to be able to buff up the entire team. So it's not just your main DPS getting extra damage anymore, it's the entire team getting extra damage. And I do want to go back to just pointing this out with the mono electric team, that some characters don't trigger their skills or combo skills as often. Some don't react or scale with reaction damage, and some apply elements a little too slowly. Going back to that team, if we look at this, right, we have Arknight, whose combo skill cooldown 3 seconds, which means as long as you're able to trigger that condition, you are always able to activate Peal of Thunder. Aviwina, her combo skill being 13 seconds. The electric units are very fast characters. You go over to Perlica. Perlica's combo skill is 20 seconds. And then you go over to Ontal, who is the highest cooldown on the team right now, being 25 seconds. But remember that focus lasts for 60 seconds. So this is kind of like a one and done, right? Being able to use the EMP test site combo skill, activate it, get the double application plus the susceptibility from the focus. You keep focus, and then you keep all the damage cycling throughout the entire team. This is helping you basically do all of their rotations and skills, their combo skills, as often as possible before reapplying the focus ability or focus debuff to the enemy, which saves you a lot of skill points. Basically saying, hey, Ontal only has to use his skill at the beginning of the fight, and then you're done for the rest of the fight. So my general rule of thumb here is that elemental stacking only works when the kit rewards it. So now we need to look at what each character actually does for the team. Now we get into what would be considered a core teaching moment for like a lot of you guys, right? Just the core aspect of building teams. And this works across multiple games, any RPG, Pokemon, gacha games, whatever you want to do. Always try and find a core concept or a core principle that you can apply. So in this case, we're going to use 4 practical roles. Now I know the game has their own roles, such things like main DPS, Vanguard, damage dealer, amp up, support, things like that. But I don't want 20 different roles for the rest of what we're talking about. We're only going to stick to like 4 things. This can expand, decrease, right? Or diminish, shrink. That's the other word. This can expand or shrink depending on what you got going on. But for the most part, number 1 is going to be the Applier. The Applier is going to be the character that inflicts the status on the enemy. So this is going to be characters like Wolfguard. There's going to be characters like Chin. There's going to be characters like, where's baby girl, Estella, and then of course Perlica, right? All 4 of these characters are able to apply something or inflict the enemy with something, which then helps trigger something else. A lot of the time, these characters are going to have low cooldowns and high frequency of being able to use these abilities. Now, outside of the electric team, right? Because we already seen the electric team's cooldowns are very small. What these characters are going to be able to do is like, you know, anywhere between maybe like 10 seconds to 15, 18 seconds probably, because the rotation time in this game isn't that fast. I'm very used to games like Zenless Zone Zero, where in Zenless, my rotation is like 7 seconds, right? Depending on like what team I'm playing. But in this game, that's not the case at all. Another thing about these characters, the Appliers don't really need to do big damage, but they are somewhere close to a sub DPS if you're really thinking about it that way, because a character like Wolfguard is a character who's, you know, combusting on enemies, right? Whenever he does ultimate, he consumes everything, forcibly applies combustion, and then this is going to be able to do essentially a DOT for fire. But he wants all of this damage, because all of this, if we go inside of his kit, you guys can see, right? Additional attack damage. He has multipliers that are pretty good, and this is early on. Mine's is still level 1, yeah? So damage multiplier is 60%, and then over here per sequence 32% on the damage multiplier. So like they actually want some bit of damage. You want to build them in that manner. After that, we're going to go into trigger characters. Now you could use trigger, I use trigger, but I just think the term is cool. You could also just consider these your main DPS character, right? The character that is going to be able to trigger, or rather work off of whatever it is that you did. That's why I call it a trigger, because they're essentially triggering whatever that effect was or application that you put on. These are going to be characters like Levitain. There's going to be characters like Arknights. There's going to be characters like Aviwina, and then Last Right, who I don't have on my profile for this account. So just pretend for a second. Let's just pretend Snowshine is a Last Right, okay guys, just for a little bit. So that's who's going to be on this team, okay? These characters are going to be the ones who consume the status. This is your big dick damage, okay? Big damage spikes. Levitain, huge damage, right? AoE, massive damage. Arknights, huge damage. A little bit of a mix of, I forget the term, but his damage is like cleave. and straight shots, right? Down the line and then cleaving. But because of the way that his whip sword, his chain sword works, like Ivy from Soul Calibur, he's able to hit a little bit ahead of him, right? A good distance ahead of him, but not the same distance that Leviathan is going to be able to hit. Then you have a character like Aviwina. Aviwina is a lot more of a Pierce typing character where all of her electric attacks, her skills and combo skills and her ultimate go through the enemy. So this is going to be like, hey, you really want to work on lineups with Aviwina if you're using her as your main DPS. You don't want to just use her combo skill, because if you use her combo skill and your spears, your lightning spears are behind you, that means that they're going to come straight to you and they're not going to hit the enemy. I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably realized this by now when playing Aviwina, but if not, let me know and I can actually talk more about her. Since all of the previous betas, my only DPS that I was forced to use was Aviwina, so I know a lot about that character. And then lastly is going to be the character of Last Rite. Last Rite is going to be a more of a single target character because a lot of her combo skills and abilities focus on stacking up as many of the cryo infliction as possible onto one enemy, right? And then she takes advantage of it, consumes all of that. And unfortunately, she can't consume the entire field, but you can apply it to multiple enemies, but she still has a long cooldown for that move as well. Next up, we're going to get into the Amplifier, and the Amplifier is going to be the buffer essentially. But amplifiers, I also like to consider buffers. I also like to consider the debuffer or reaction multipliers, right? So these are going to be characters like Akakuri. There's going to be characters like Antal, and then Gilberta, who I don't have on this particular account, so it is what it is. You could also kind of consider Fluorite to be one of the characters that you use in this particular situation, because all of these characters essentially are able to work off of the element. They're able to buff up. So in Akakuri's case, whenever you have her, I think the actual number is P3. When you get her P3, she's going to increase the attack of everyone on the team during her ultimate by like 10% or something like that. It also increases her own attack by 10% times 5 stacks or something like that, whatever the number is, but that's what she does. She also regenerates SP. Same thing could be applied for Antal, who's going to have both electric and heat buffs for the entire team, as well as his own status condition. And he's able to work off that too, which helps trigger things for an electric team or a heat team or fire team, depending on which team you're using. And then Fluorite is the pretty much same way, or what she can actually stack onto things. So if you have 2 of a cryo stack or 2 of a nature stack, what her combo skill allows her to do is like, hey, does that person have 2 on them? They do. Awesome, I'm gonna double it. And then she gets to reapply another stack of whatever they have onto them just by doing her combo skill. She's a very good character, very awesome. And she also is able, because of that and the way it triggers, it's going to activate corrosion. Corrosion is going to be able to drop the defenses of whatever enemy is on the field as long as they're corrupted or corroded. Really good stuff. So this is kind of where you're going for the Amplifier. They don't really care about the elemental stacking itself. They're there to help you get whatever goal you're looking for in mind. And then of course, lastly, we have the sustain or utility slot. I feel like I don't really have to explain this, but in the event that I do, I will. These are characters like Ardelia. This is going to be characters like Alish, surprisingly enough, Snowshine and Catcher. Snowshine and Catcher being the 2 easiest ones to explain. They're straight up defensive units. They have shields. You see the tank icon on them, boom, that is a shield. So you just kind of go with that, right? They're defenders. They're going to be able to help keep the team alive by putting up a shield. If you're familiar from games like Sorrel, right? Instead of a healer like Bailu, you're going to have a shielder like Japard or Aventurine. This is essentially what that is. Some of them have SP regenerative factors. Some of them have healing factors like Snowshine, for instance. And some of them straight up apply statuses, which are really good. Like Catcher. Catcher is slept on. Like if I felt like building this character, I would. And I don't think that I necessarily need to, because I have Pogranichnik. There we go. And I don't know, but if you have the physical units and you're using Inman, I feel like Catcher might be the play for you instead of using Ardelia, and you put Ardelia somewhere else. It is what it is. Alish being a character that works off of other ice units with the solidification, and he's going to be able to help characters like with my Pogranichnik team. I use Alish and Estrella together, and I consistently get vulnerability stacks across the entire team. And if I start playing a little bit more, I guess like sweaty or skillful, if you will, I don't like using the term sweaty here, just being more mindful, and I use manual swaps to get what I want, I can line it up so that Estrella and Alish hit the entire field like one shot. It's really good. It's really awesome. I love this team. It's very fun to use, and it gets my brain working. In Alish's case, he's not a defender or healer, but he is utility, which is going to provide SP. Whenever he fishes up something, it's always giving you SP back. Sometimes if he gets like a really big fish, then you get SP plus some other things, which is kind of the thing that you want to work off, right? With his combo skills and his battle skills, ultimate, things like that. And then Ardelia being a debuffer and a healer is pretty good. And if you get her weapon, which everyone gets her weapon and the character, they're giving this stuff away for free for Ardelia. It's kind of cracked. I don't know why they're doing it. I'm not complaining, but dang, you get her weapon, her signature weapon with her as a character, right? Now she buffs, debuffs, and she heals. It's really good. Okay, so let's take a concept that most players are building as of late. And then this, obviously, this is like if you don't have or follow a guide, right? I'll start with Inman because that's the main physical guy that we have, the main protagonist. You guys know the MC. Physical, you start off with a character, Dapan, or Da Pan, right? Panda. Pan. I see what they did there. Anyway, so Panda, right? That's the second one. We have somebody else like, I don't know, X and X, right? Just kind of like whatever you want. Maybe Perlica, maybe Catcher. If you don't have Catcher, you guys probably seen like Akakuri around, maybe Akakuri, things like this. So why this team is essentially like 2 big guys or 2 DPS and then 2 whatever the hex is because if you look at it, both of these characters being in this case it says crowd control, but Inman is basically your main DPS. Like, yeah, he has some CC to his kit, but you're really using Inman for this part right here, which is Crush. And so there might be some teams in the future or even right now that you could use that will allow you to essentially take advantage of the vulnerability stacks and then use Inman as some type of support character to just crush everybody, right? But you're still building Inman as a DPS because Crush is damage. And in order for you to get that damage off, this is coming from Inman's stats themselves. If we come back over here, let me see if we can go in here. We click on this, we go to battle skill, and then there we go. Yeah, it has a damage multiplier, right? So as you're leveling this up and you'll keep it going, the damage multiplier will get higher and higher and higher. That stagger will also probably increase. Panda is essentially doing the same thing, right? Where's it at? His combo skill. So whenever an enemy reaches 4 stacks of vulnerability, right, which is that part's important, he's going to be able to swing off, do his combo, and then do Crush. And his Crush deals more damage specifically than someone like Inman's Crush. Inman's Crush is just a basic crush, right? But Panda's Crush is going to be a crush that deals more damage with his specific crush. And so how do you get into the 4 stacks, right? That would be the first question that you ask. We'll go over that in like a slight little bit, right? But I'm explaining the bad example, if you will. So when you have both of these characters on the team, but you have no one to enable that. So like Perlica is not helping with vulnerability. Akakuri is also not helping with vulnerability. He can apply vulnerability, but because of the way that Crush works or Breach, once you apply it, the first time you use it, if there's not already a vulnerability stack, then they will apply vulnerability. But once it's applied, Crush takes it away. It consumes all of the stacks of vulnerability. Breach does the same thing. Another example of a bad team would probably be something like Inman. We could have Antal, Akakuri, and then where's she at, right? I swear I just had her in my face. There we go, Perlica. And so this team here, you have one main DPS character, which in this case is going to be Inman, and then 3 supports. Now, in most gacha games, this is going to be referred to as a hyper carry team or some type of hyper carry team. But again, it's not that hyper carry is essentially bad or a problem. The issue is that you're not playing to whatever your DPS character is, right? Like, he wants vulnerability stacks so that he could deal Crush. At the end of it, he wants to be able to combo off of his teammates' skills so that he can put the original crystals on there, get more damage out of that, more vulnerability, so on and so forth, right? This guy is straight up electric and heat amplifier, right? He's buffing that up. And like, yeah, sure, he's an amp. He could still give you like some attack percent bust or damage percent bust, whatever he's going to have in his kit. But that's not really helping Inman. The same thing happens with Akakuri, right? Especially if you don't have her maxed out, which it'll be really easy to do, but whatever, you don't have her maxed out, then all she's doing is heat stuff, right? And a little bit of SP recovery. The SP recovery doesn't matter on this team because yeah, she's going to be able to activate his combo skill, but you're dependent on this now. And this has a 16-second cooldown. So it's not like you can just, you know, save all of your abilities, keep using Perlica, and then, oh, that's a combo, activate Inman's combo skill. No, because it has a 16-second cooldown. So you still have to play around that fact, which we'll talk about in a bit, probably like in a combat video, if you will, like managing cooldowns and kind of knowing this kind of stuff, because that's a whole different layer of the combat. But now that I've given you like some bad examples, let's go back to the team that I showed earlier and let's talk about how to fix it, which was instead of these here, I think it was 1, 2, no Panda, right? But we had Panda on the team. I think we had Perlic on the team, and then we had, what was it, Catcher or something like that? I legit don't remember, but we're just gonna go over fixing it, right? So let's go with Panda. If Panda needs 4 stacks and you really wanted to make this team work, there is a way to make this team work, which would essentially be something like this, just off concept alone, right? I'm not saying this is the best team. I'm just explaining to you guys the concept so you're a bit more aware of like how you can build your team with your favorite character and getting the damage or getting that team's performance. So Inman has a combo skill, which is going to be able to apply the vulnerability, right? Every time he does this, boom, vulnerability stack, awesome. So what you're able to do from that, his basic skill is going to apply a vulnerability because that's what Lift does. Lift does not take it away, it adds on to it. Perlica being able to use her skill, right? Her buff isn't going to matter here because of all the electrification. You're not going to be able to take advantage of that, but you're going to be able to use her skill, which is going to activate his skill. That's going to give his combo skill, right? Boom. So now he's going to do that. You're also able to use lift as many times as you have skills for that. And with catcher on the team, catcher has an ability where he puts on a shield. Anytime any one of your characters takes damage, the controlling character or operator takes the damage, he's going to punch the crap out of them and apply a vulnerability stack. Catcher is a sleeper for physical teams because just putting that shield on, maxing him out, what this is going to do is give you free vulnerability stacks, right? It doesn't cost anything. I mean, except SP, of course, but there's no cooldown on it, which is very important. No cooldown means you can spam this for as many skill points as you have, right? As soon as that shield goes away, reapply it, get the vulnerability stacks. That's important because now you can just straight up, hey man, you got a vulnerability stack, bam, crush. And because you're tied to a 20-second cooldown, your rotation is now applied to 20 seconds, which for the most part, you're not really going to be speeding up this part here. Yeah. Where you're like, oh, I'm going to use this and use her thing and then use it. That whole rotation is probably going to take you somewhere between 15 and 20 seconds, especially with the way that SP recovery works in this game. And because of that, the better play to do would be to just straight up get rid of Perlica altogether, right? And if you really want to work with monophysical, or anything like that, you just get rid of Perlica and you can apply Ardelia if you really want to put her on there, because now she gets corrosion. That's more debuffing the enemy, if you will, and a healer. So now you have that, but he's a sustain. You don't really need a healer on this team. You could use Estrella because Estrella is going to be able to do a couple things with like just a lift off of her spear, but I wouldn't do that because you don't have an ice unit to solidify on top of that so that she can actually work from there. But you can, the list goes on, right? You can kind of do whatever you want. This is kind of the basis of understanding that. There's also something that I've been working on, which I might make this its own video because I haven't seen too many people using this team, if any at all. But this is probably one of my favorite teams in the game to play as of right now, outside of Electric. Electric is really fun too, but I do like this team a lot because it teaches you the full flexibility of how physical works, the vulnerability, being able to use breach or crush, and then maximizing your rotations or combos or being a little bit more fluid, right? This team can be more fluid. So the way that I built this team is basically working around Pogranicznik. I don't want to call him Pog for like obvious reasons as to what that means, but you get what I'm saying. Chin skill gives me lift, so I'm able to work off of that. And what Estrella does, which is really cool. So Estrella has her, her actual skill. You throw the lance, right? Boom, it applies cryo. Alish is an SP recoverer, but his combo skill, or his skill in particular, whenever he slaps somebody on with cryo infliction, it's going to solidify the enemy. This is important because now this activates her combo skill, which is on a pretty short cooldown. And when she gets that combo skill, right, as soon as solidification happens, hey man, I'm chucking another spear and we're lifting the enemies up, right? We're juggling enemies now. Boom, this is awesome because it not only does it apply physical susceptibility, which makes it so that he's going to do more damage, but it also gives me a vulnerability stack, which is beautiful. On top of that, now I get to activate her skill. This is going to let him do his skill. And now with his skill in particular, whenever they have, because you want as many vulnerability stacks as possible, right? Up to 3. And so when they get 3 vulnerability stacks on them, you pop that skill, wham, wham. He's going to breach everything. So whatever he took away from them, that's going to go into his combo skill. So if you only take away 2, the combo skill is only going to have 2 stacks. If you take away 3, it's going to have 3 stacks, which is the max. 4 doesn't matter at this point. You just want to build it up to 3, right? And however you do that is how you do that. But I really enjoy playing with this team. It's super cool. Anyway, let's add the final layer and how kits want to be played, which I guess kind of like goes into this part here, but I'll explain more about it in detail in a much more scripted manner. Finally, we get into the final layer. Lastly, we come down to the final layer, right, guys? Which, let me explain why some characters break the mono element logic, right? With the fire with the fire, and then like you have 4 fire teams or 4 characters on the same, whatever, 4 elements on the same team. Mono electric works not because it's mono electric. Mono electric works because all of those characters play off of each other. You're able to utilize Perlica's electrification or forced electrification in order to trigger the combo skills from Arknight. And then because of that, with the way that your final attack works, because of Aviwina, when she hits an electrified enemy with her final attack, that activates her combo skill. And so now you get into a lot more skillful play. I'm using quotation marks there because this is essentially like what I would consider early game advanced tech, if you will. And it's really just execution. You're able to, and I'll try and have some gameplay clips here, but basically what you're able to do is when you're playing this team, you're able to line it up so that you can essentially use 1, 2, 3 back to back. And so this would be like Electrica activates the electrified status, which is going to activate the arc light. But in order for you to do this kind of like 1-1-1, so you line up exactly what you want, you're able to do it in a way where you can time your your final attack to hit as soon as Electrified hits from Perlica, and because the enemy already gets electrified, this is going to activate Arklight, but because you did the final attack before Arklight actually registered, it goes in line with first Aviwina and then Arklight. Now, it doesn't matter per se if you do it Arklight and then Aviwina, but this is just a way to control who gets the combo skill first, because there's not a way for us to pick who activates that combo skill first without just letting them run out, right? And you don't want to do that because that's a waste of damage. And so I explain all of that so that you guys understand a bit more of a basic concept, but it can be confusing or a little bit, again, I'm not trying to use the word advanced here, but it's things to think about when you're building your team, okay? And so some of the things that you're looking for, what does this character do? Does this character trigger on hit or does it trigger on skill? Does this character trigger something whenever like maybe I manually swap into somebody else, or if I position my timing a certain way, does it trigger after X amount of time? Does it trigger if I get hit, like for instance Snowshine or Catcher's ability where they need to get hit or do a perfect parry, whatever, then they activate whatever they got going on? Is this something like Shaihi where whenever her timer runs out, that's when she actually activates her combo skill on top of somebody getting cryo inflicted, right? These are things that you want to consider because this dictates how you build your team. Some characters scale on reaction damage, and then some characters are going to be scaled off of raw attack stats or raw crit stats, depending on the future of what we get in mind. Some characters are reaction drivers, which is what I explained earlier with Arklight. Some characters are reaction payoffs. This is something that I also explained earlier with Estrella being able to use her skill and then activate Alicia's or anybody's really that's going to solidify off of her cryo infliction, and then she gets her combo skill, which is going to help my physical team. Or if you were using an ice team or a cryo team, you could do the same thing there. And then some characters just want raw uptime and buffs. This is closer to what you would consider your normal hyper carry DPS. And so we break down some of the characters here, like for instance, Levitane, who is your fire agent, right? Your main fire character. She's going to have low trigger speed when played optimally. And I say low instead of immediate or instant because it really just depends on how you play her. Some characters or some teams enable her to basically fill out her entire melted flame meter in one hit. Some teams allow her to fill out the entire 4 bars of melted flame in one hit, while other teams have a slower rotation, 1, 2, 3, and then she activates the final hit, and that's 4. Then you can use her skill. And because of that, what you're able to do, if things are more passive with the way the team plays, now you're able to get away with essentially saving your skill points for just enhanced skills with Levitane until you pop her ultimate, and then you do whatever you want. She has huge nuke damage, and then what does that make her want, right? Well, you could play her in a mono fire team, but honestly, I found that Levitane performs a lot better in mixed teams. So these teams being something like Ardelia and Ontal, or maybe if you don't have Ardelia, you could run Fluorite. Fluorite is going to be able to force things on a timer, and it works a little bit slower, but you still get what you want. You still get the corrosion, things like that. The complete opposite of Levitane would be a character like Lastrite. Lastrite is going to be the ice standard 6-star, and she's going to have high single target damage. She has a much slower trigger speed. Even if you play her optimally, it's still a lot slower, significantly slower than a character like Levitane's, but it's kind of like supposed to be this big payoff with the high single target damage it does, because she's not hitting everyone or trying to hit everyone on the field. She's only trying to hit one person on the field or one enemy on the field. So a character like that, what does she want? Well, she's great with mono element because her kit in particular wants you to have at least 3 cryo inflictions in order to activate her combo skills, battle skills, ultimates, whatever the big dick damage is that you're looking for. So building a mono team around that makes way more sense than trying to build a mixed team, because you want as much cryo infliction as possible so that you can keep everything on a consistent stack. Now, having a character like Catcher over Snowshine, for instance, might be better though, because you're adding a little bit more of the vulnerability stacks, which is still going to help you get the little bit like a damage buff, if you will, whereas Snowshine is a lot more reactive. So if you're not playing against a aggressive enemy, Snowshine sucks. And I don't mean like I love that character, but Snowshine is not doing her job if you're not playing against someone who's constantly trying to attack you, because in order for you to get her skill off, which you still need the SP points for, it has to be a parry. Like you have to hit somebody with that shield, or she has to get hit on reaction with the shield. It's a lot. And right now, trying to combine different characters, at one point Lastrite and Yvonne were the best team together, right? They worked off of each other. Now they compete for the same spot. So pretty much everything that I said about Lastrite kind of works similar for Yvonne, but Yvonne's a much better character. At the end of that, we ultimately get into how do you actually build teams with all the information that I just dropped. The easiest way that I would tell anybody to start building teams in Arknights Endfield would be just literally a 4-step process. I'm not even gonna hold you. Number 1, pick your payoff unit. This is going to be the unit that deals the most damage, okay? Your main DPS. We talked about Levitain, we talked about Last Right, we talked about Arknights, we talked about Aviwina, we have Yvonne, whoever you want. Pick a main DPS. That's the easiest way to explain that. The second step is going to be now you add an applier. This character is strictly to enable your main DPS, okay? So if we use Levitain from earlier, or we use Arknights from earlier, the 2 appliers that I picked, Wolfguard and Chin respectively, because using their manual skill, their battle skill, I'm able to immediately apply whatever it is that I'm looking for, because it's not forced, it's just gonna happen, right? A forced application would be Perlica, and there's a little bit of a difference. The game registers a forced application different than a natural application. I don't know why, but it does. So pay attention to that. That wording is very important. So after that, the third step is going to be adding an amplifier. Remember, amplifier in this case being, they could be a debuffer, they could be an amp up character or anything of the sort, right? Just somebody that's going to help you increase the damage. They're going to help you increase the uptime, or they're going to help you increase the amount of triggers that you have. Someone that's going to help either your sub DPS, help the main DPS, or help your main DPS do more of whatever the main DPS wants to do. And right now we have a very small roster compared to a lot of the other games or gacha games that we have available to us. So it's easier for you to build this team, and it's easier for a lot more players to be able to share what works as quickly as we can, because everyone is playing everything. There is no, oh, the only person in the world that has this character is it. Like, nah, it doesn't work like that. Your final step, the 4th step, is just to add sustain or utility. That's it. I wouldn't even call it like another support, if you will, because it needs to have a purpose. All right. This game is unlike the other games where you can't heal. I'm literally playing the game kind of like Genshin, where I'm like, oh, I die. Let me just press my 2 button real quick, or my 4 or whatever. And then the option to revive them pops up. You can't do that. So you kind of do want to sustain, especially early on, or not even early on, throughout the game, where you're learning, you're building, and everything isn't perfected, because sustain will help you stay alive. Ardelia is for free. Everyone has her. But I will say Ardelia does not work with every team like she does on paper, but in terms of like getting things across, sometimes in certain teams, Ardelia actually stops you from getting what you want. What team is that? The Mono Electric team that I talked about earlier. If you replace any of those units on the team with Ardelia, Ardelia actually steals the reaction from Aviwina or from Arclight, and this ruins the like infinite combo loop that we talked about before, right? It's not infinite, but it's pretty quick, okay? 3-second cooldown is insanely fast in this game. In fact, I think it's the fastest in the game, which is why the Mono Electric team does not have an Ardelia on it. That works great for you, because later down the road, whenever we do get multi-team content, you don't need Ardelia for this Mono Electric team. It's the cheapest team in the game. It's the most free-to-play team in the game. It's awesome. And so with all 4 of those steps, you literally just apply it. I already told you guys about the Mono Element team or the Mono Electric team as an example. I talked about Levitain. We can even talk about my favorite right now is Arknights. Man, that's gonna get so difficult to say back to back. But we talk about Arknights, and my boy here has Chin and Arknights as the 2 physical units, and then we have Estella and Alish both being ice units. And you would think like, man, that's crazy. Ice doesn't work with physical. But as I explained to you guys, Estella is here simply to help aid more of the physical susceptibility, and she's also giving me that 3rd physical stack, the vulnerability stack, so that I can get it as quickly as possible. And hers is free because it's from a combo skill, not from a battle skill. Chin's is free because it's from a combo skill, not from a battle skill. And by this point, I would have 3 SP saved up. I can now use Chin's battle skill, which is gonna be forced. And then I have Alish's in the back because he's gonna activate the solidification. He's gonna be able to get more. If I get a big fish from his pull up, that's gonna be more SP. I can activate Arknights' battle skill, which then activates his combo skill. And I have the ultimate. It just, everything works fluidly together. And with Arknights in particular, whenever he does use his ultimate, anyone that does any type of physical attack of vulnerability, boom, I'm summoning something like Aftershock and a follow-up. I'm using Numby. That's literally what that is, like Numby on command from Starla. It's great. I love it. It's awesome. It's super cool. Team building in this game is not about color matching. It's about function alignment. So let's wrap everything up here now that we're at the end of the video. We have 3 layers to really focus on or hone in on when it comes to understanding team building in the game: the elements themselves, the roles, and then the kit incentives, aka how does something work and what do they want from this kit or what do they want from the team. Right now, everyone is early game, except Rin. Rin is like at the end game right now. Right now, everyone's kind of in the same boat. I wouldn't say that your team is bad, right? If you're like building a team or you think this character sucks or whatever, it's probably not that the team is bad or it feels bad. It's not your stats. It's not the character. It's more so that you don't have a proper balance of the roles on the team, right? You might be building a team that you think works because, again, color matching, or maybe someone told you that it works, but you don't really understand why it works or why it doesn't work. And that's what I'm trying to do with this video. I know it's long-winded, but there's a lot of information that gets jam-packed into these type of games. And when you're trying to break something down and explain it in a way where like everyone can understand it, I would much rather give you guys too much information than not enough information. So I don't want to apologize for giving a lot of information, but it is what it is. Now, if you want, I can do a follow-up breaking down specific characters and who they actually work with. Just let me know in the comments down below and I'll do my best. Keep in mind, I don't have every character. All right, guys, I don't have like the super secret server or whatever. I'm not in that. Maybe I'll ask like my homie Brags or Ren, like, yo, let me borrow your account, because they have characters that I don't, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm out of here. Thank y'all for watching today's video. Let me know if you want to see more Arknights content. Leave a like, comment down below, join the Discord, all that fun stuff. I can't say my user outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Smell you later.